Welcome back to the Fulfilled Female Entrepreneur Podcast. It's your host, Cassandra Rosa. I'm a certified life coach and healer and intuitive business coach. And the mission behind this podcast is to help you to create a fulfilling life and business. Today, I'm really excited to have Sarah Spurlock on the podcast, and she's going to be talking about reclaiming your voice and your power. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I'm so excited to be joined by Sarah today. We just recorded an episode on her podcast, which we're going to leave in the show notes. Before we get started, I want to say thank you, Sarah, for coming on and shifting the roles so that we can hear more about your story and you and all the goodness that you're doing in the world.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yes. I'm going to read out her bio and introduce her. So Sarah Spurlock is a writer, artist, and pole dancer in Los Angeles. She works with women and femmes who are blazing their own trails in patriarchal, male-dominated fields to create compelling communication stories. Sarah also hosts a weekly feminist podcast called Reclaiming, its associated newsletter, and Imminent Empress, a weekly Substack column on being a forever work in progress. You can also connect with Sarah online at sarahspurlock.com or on Instagram. And I'm going to leave all of her links in her bio. Today, she's really going to be talking about how you can reclaim your voice and tell your story for maximum impact.
Yes.
I love that. You're such a multifaceted person and creative, doing so many beautiful things. And I can't wait for the audience to learn more about you in this conversation.
Oh, I try. I'm a Gemini, so anything that I'm like, ooh, that sounds cool, I try it, and then most of them stick, some of them don't, and so yeah, I got my hands in lots of little things around here.
I love it. So this podcast is called Fulfilled Female Entrepreneurs, as you know. So what does fulfillment mean to you?
I would say fulfillment has everything to do with being your most authentic self, radically authentic self. And I use the word radically because I think radically is such a being you and embracing the parts of you that, especially the parts that are deemed unacceptable by the patriarchy or this, society at large, or your religion or your upbringing or whatever, really embracing those particular parts too and really nurturing those is radical authenticity. And then of course, expressing that authenticity is fulfilling as well. But I would say the most important aspect of fulfillment is being so true to yourself that no one can deny that you are just one and only version of you. You are just it. Like, you radiate this authenticity of who you are to your very molecules. That's fulfillment for me.
I love that definition. And that expression part, I think, is so huge because I feel like you can know who you are, and maybe you can be like closeted with certain parts of yourself. Like in the beginning of my business, it was like the intuitive side, like I was kind of hiding that. So that expression piece is so huge. And I know you're going to be talking a lot about that today. And all that you do as a writer and a communication specialist, like, what is the most fulfilling part of your work?
Ooh, I love working with women and femme identifying individuals who just know that they are so sparkly and special, and that what they have to offer the world is so unique and so different. And I just love working with that, again, that authenticity and that inability to sleep and eat without doing something about it. I just love that. I love when women find something, and when I use the term women, I mean, it's femme identifying, trans inclusionary women that are perceived as women. And I just love when they see a space in the patriarchal society. They see a space or a void, and they're like, oh my God, I can do that. Like, that's my space right there. That is my area in the table for me to bring my chair up. And that's my favorite part about working with women and femmes. I work with entrepreneurs and with professionals that are pivoting in their career. Maybe they've been forced out of their position due to ageism or spiritual practice or, whatever form of discrimination, ableism. So I like working with women that are just like, I didn't need that anyway. I'm going to do something that's much more aligned with my ethics, my who I am, what I want to contribute to the world. And yeah, I love that sparkle. It's what we need. We need women to sparkle. We just do.
Yes, I love that. I feel your passion like coming through every word, with every description, with every way that you're bringing your mission forward, which is so beautiful.
Thank you.
And I know like reclaiming your authenticity and reclaiming
Mhm.
your voice and really embracing who you are and voicing that with the world is a huge part of your mission. So do you want to speak more to what this whole concept of reclaiming your voice means to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So reclaiming to me is actually the second part of a step um adventure I would say that women can go through that changes the world, and not just for themselves but for everyone. And I subscribe to the belief, the Gloria Steinem belief that revolutions really start from within. And so reclaiming, I see it as the second step. The first step I see is that moment of there's something else out there for me. I'm not living my most authentic life. I'm following someone else's path that doesn't fit for me. It just doesn't fit. I'm not happy. I'm not thriving. I'm not, something's off. Something needs to change. The first step of that is recovery. And I think the recovery part, there's lots of people that are, much more qualified than I am to talk about recovering from patriarchal trauma, religious trauma, if it's a religious upbringing that you were part of. There's people that talk about that. So I think when women come to me, they might still be working through this, the recovery step. And
Mhm.
that's a step that never ends. Like I'm still recovering from my religious trauma growing up, and I'm still recovering from all kinds of patriarchal trauma that generational trauma that I inherited. So that recovery step will never really end. But there comes a point in your recovery where you're like, okay, I'm working on healing these wounds, and now I need to take back all the things that I was told was not okay. I
Mm,
need to I need to take back the things that I was told I didn't have access to, or whatever it is. So reclaiming to me is the biggest step of this journey, because it's the step that makes the most that revolution from within. That's what sparks that revolution from within. And reclaiming your voice can be anywhere from, if you've been told that you're high maintenance your whole life,
mm,
um and you make yourself small and you shrink and you don't want to ask for what you need and deserve. And reclaiming your voice could be as much of, hey, I'm sitting in a car with five other people and the AC is blasting and I'm freezing, and they're all wearing jackets. And do I just deal with it, or am I actually okay with this situation, or can I actually use my voice and reclaim my voice and just be like, hey guys, it's kind of cold in here, can we turn the AC off? So
mhm,
it's like your voice can be that. It could be reclaiming your voice in the corporate, office space of speaking up in meetings, or if someone's getting credit for a project that you worked on. It's and the whole process of reclaiming yourself and your voice is it's such a nuanced process. It's like we talk about, it's baby steps and big steps, and you can't make those big steps without those baby steps. But reclaiming is really, really just kind of looking at the places in your life where you were told to shrink, or
mm,
you were told to cover, or you were told to be less, or you were told to be quiet, or whatever it is, and just say no. No, you know what? Thank you. That didn't work. I'm recovering all the trauma. I'm healing all the trauma with my therapist, or, my shaman, or my coach, or my whatever. And that didn't work. And I'm healing, but also I'm gonna go ahead and all these things that I was told I can't have and can't do and can't say, I'm going to go ahead and start saying them. I'm going to start doing it because I think I deserve that, you know? That's my
Yeah.
power. And then the third step is resistance. And that's where I think, reclamation is absolutely part of, resisting those oppressive systems that have harmed and traumatized us to begin with. So,
Wow. Wow. I love that. I feel your passion. I feel how in your journey you've done the work and like you've built this beautiful process that can help people to share that and really step into their authentic selves. And
yeah.
this image that I keep seeing was like a lot of people that lose their voice is from what they hear from people on the outside and what
Yep.
comes into their ears. Like
Absolutely.
when I was younger, it's like, you're useless, or, like
Mhm.
working in a job, like sexism, ageism,
Mhm.
all these different facets, which even from like bullying as a kid, people can take
Mhm.
on that type of trauma of,
Mhm.
you're not pretty enough, you're not good enough. As women, we get so many of these stories developed that don't even belong to us because of what we hear coming into our ears,
Yep.
and how that blocks our throats, that blocks our empowered, reclaimed, authentic version of ourselves to really share
Yeah.
with the world what we're passionate about, what we value most. And I feel like this is so huge for entrepreneurs
Oh
to
my
do
gosh,
that,
yeah.
like inner work, to really look at those traumas and look at those things that stop us from sharing our voices, because that is such a huge part of being an entrepreneur, to share your mission, to create our
Uh-huh.
revolutions in this moment in the universe, the world right now. This exact time, I think, is so pivotal for people to really kind of do that healing work of what came into their ears throughout their journey,
Yeah.
and give themselves permission, which seems to be this big theme on both of our podcasts that we've been
Yeah.
doing today, to like fully share what their mission is, what their
Yeah.
purpose is, what they love, what's meaningful to them, and ignite that massive ripple effect in the world. And I would
Yeah.
love to see from your perspective, from all that you know, why you think it's important for entrepreneurs to give themselves that permission to reclaim their voice and
Yeah.
share their missions to create their own personal revolutions.
Yes.
This
Oh my
moment
gosh.
in time.
You know just the question. I just got goosebumps.
Me too,
But
yeah.
my favorite thing is when an entrepreneur or a professional or someone understands that, like I call it their origin story, kind of
Mhm.
like a superhero has an origin. My husband's
Yeah.
really into like Marvel and superheroes and comics, so I frame it in kind of like this origin story. So we all
Okay.
have an origin story as a woman, as women and femmes, right? We all have and that now what moment, that moment of, okay, something else is out there for me, I'm going to make the leap. And that is such an incredible story, and that is a story that's not being told enough.
Mm,
And I use the example of I use this example all the time, and there's a woman in Portland that has a bar. I know I've told you about this. It's a
yeah.
sports bar, and she loves going to sports bars, and she loves watching women's matches. But she realized there were no sports bars in her area that had women's matches on their TVs. It was just men's. So she opened her own, and she called it the Sports Bra, which is so adorable. I just love it so much. And they only play sports matches, women's sports matches on TVs. And when there are no sports matches on, they keep the TVs off to protect that space. And what I think that's a story, an origin story that I think more women entrepreneurs, more women professionals, no matter where you are in your business stage, even if you've been in business for 10 years, that and you've never told this story before, it is such an incredible way to not only establish your leadership in your field and to gain that trust with your clients or your audience or your whoever it is, in a new and very deep, meaningful way, especially if you work with other women. But it also tells other women, that might have heard of it, or that are walking by that sports bra, sports bar, and they're like, "What is that?" And they're like, "Oh my god, she made this bar. I could do that too." Like
Yes.
we need. There is never going to be enough stories of women
Yes.
throwing out the book and saying, I'm going to do something that makes me passionate and or that makes me feel like my purpose is being fulfilled. That is something that women currently don't have access to. I know I can do it. I know I can do it well. And I think it doesn't matter who you're serving. It doesn't matter, what your service or your product or whatever it is. Your story as a woman, as a femme, is so valuable, and where
Yeah.
you got to where you are because there's not enough of us doing it. and
Yeah.
and the revolution really will happen when all of us feel like that's an option for us. So that's why you're, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, whatever your business may be, whatever, wherever you started, whenever you started, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. What matters is that you tell it, and you tell it in a way that's compelling and engages people, gains people's trust, establishes you as a leader, and also tells other women that they too can follow their dreams and to get unstuck and to create something that breaks the patriarchy from within. That's what I like to call it, breaking the patriarchy from within. Because,
I
it's
love it.
hard to break it from without. Well, let's work within the system right now and just really try to crack it.
I love it. It really aligns with a lot of stuff that I've been saying lately
Yeah.
on my social media about the concept of when we're creating a business. A lot of people that listen want to be coaches, healers,
Yeah.
entrepreneurs that are listening. And in business, often they say, create this avatar outside of yourself,
Mhm.
this person that you want to help, name them. What are their problems? Where do they hang out? And what I always tell my clients, it's really looking back on that prior version of yourself,
Exactly.
which is like your origin story, what you're
Yeah.
saying. Because all those hardships, all those things that really just piss you off, to be honest,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
those hard times, I feel
Hmm.
like the universe gifted you, God, whatever you believe in, gifted
Yeah.
you to overcome in life so that you can help other people do the same and create that ripple effect
Absolutely.
and that like revolution. And that's really powerful. Like when we're going through the thick of it, it feels like it sucks. And the
Yeah.
stuckness, the discomfort, the why is this happening? Woe is me mentality. But once you
Yeah.
overcome it and you really see what a gift it was to go through those hard times because you're meant to help other people do the same, it's so powerful.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, you want to add
It's,
something? Yeah.
well, I was just going to say too, I mean, I feel like every single woman who's been through what you and I are talking about is like this process of making these baby steps and then these big leaps and fulfilling that purpose, that greater purpose that you have. There's always, I have never met any, and this is going to be a double negative. So I've never met anyone that hasn't experienced it when they have to protect what they've done vehemently,
Mm,
whether it's a family member that's like, you're going through something, huh? Or it's like, someone that doesn't believe in your business, or someone that doesn't get your business, or even if it's internal and it's not external to you, it's your own limiting beliefs that we've been talking about limiting beliefs. um you have to protect it, and that protecting it is such a critical part. That's such an act of resistance in itself. That's such a revolutionary thing as a woman in our patriarchal society, to protect your vision and to keep working at it, and to, like you said, do it with the fear and be your own martyr, like that everyone experiences. And that is such a huge part of every woman's story. And
yes.
that is something that is just not talked about enough in for women entrepreneurs and women in business. It's just not. And if it's, the more we talk about it and the more we normalize it, the that's where the revolution happens. That really
Yes.
is.
I love it. And, uncovering that origin story and really connecting with it deeply and being able to take people on an experience to share, like along with you, by sharing your story, by
Yeah.
owning it, by, getting at this precipice point when you've done the healing and you feel good enough to talk about maybe some of the harder things that you went through. Like, what are the ways that people can reclaim their voice? By developing their origin story? Like, what are some steps that they can take and some tips that you can
Oh,
share to allow them
that's
to uncover that? Because this really seems to be like the root of reclaiming your voice is
yeah.
uncovering that origin story and sharing it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, we've talked about doing baby steps and kind of, but I think one of the big things when I think about when I'm going to approach someone in their origin story and I'm going to write it for them, or I'm going to help them write it or whatever, I think where you start is that now what moment.
Mm-hmm.
So that is very much, and you know, that now what moment encompasses so much, right? It
Yes.
encompasses the path that someone else put you on. So you went to school to be a, you know, a doctor instead of going to art school or whatever. That, like, that moment, it just says so much.
Mm-hmm.
What that now, that's where your story, and it can start before that, sure, but I always will start the story there.
Yeah.
So and then that moment of there has to be more out there for me.
Yeah.
And I think when you're building, so when your listeners, when your clients, when they're building that story into their marketing communications, any of that, start there, start at that moment. And you don't have to get into details. You know, you don't have to say, oh, I was married to this terrible person and blah blah blah, I had this terrible job and whatever. You can talk about kind of the more societal things that you were experiencing. So like, I you know, dress code. So I was noticing my male colleagues, you know, got off the hook for, you know, being lax on their dress codes, but you know, the women were, they, HR came down on the women more, and
Mm.
just things like that. You don't have to get too granular with it. Just
Yeah.
kind of speaking to that moment of where you noticed that there is an imbalance, um, and that you just didn't want to take it anymore. And I think that's such a great place to start. And when you're talking about that origin story, I think, like what we've said so many times in our conversations today, has been, you know, those baby steps. Because I
Mhm.
think what people see is they see a woman who's creating a sports bar, and they think, oh, that is so cool. No way I could ever do that.
Mm.
And it's that's not what it's about. I'm sure if you talk to the woman, I'm dreaming of the day that I reach out to this woman and, you know, offer my services or whatever. I have not talked to her yet, but I'm sure if you reached out to her, she would say, oh, no, like, I did this first, you know, I made a pitch deck first, or I reached out to a few friends and family to borrow money, or whatever it happens to be. You know, it's like there's little baby steps first. So when you're writing your story at that point, you start with those baby steps, you know, just 3 or 4 of them. Just what are the little things that you did to test your trust and your faith in yourself, and gain that confidence in yourself. That proof of concept is a big thing. Like you know, if you like, I'm thinking of Sarah Blakely, who made Spanx, you know, when she cut
Mhm.
the feet off of her, just those like that. It's such an interesting part of her story too. And that's something that I feel like every entrepreneur has, that moment where she's just like, I'm going to cut the feet off of my pantyhose and see if that really works under my skirt and really makes me feel like there's that little thing. Those are the little pieces of your story that are so compelling, because people can see themselves in it more than they
Mm.
can see themselves in, I got a location on this street and I secured funding and I had an investor and all that
Right.
stuff. Like, no. That's great. Wonderful. If you have that in your story, I love it.
Mhm.
But those little baby steps are what make the big difference. So
Mhm.
when you're crafting your own story, that's where it is. It's the origin moment, and then it's a few baby steps, and then it's maybe something big that you learned about yourself from those baby steps. So you know, I learned that for me, I had no idea this is where I would end up. I had no idea that I would end up, you know, 6 years ago when I started this journey, I had no idea I'd end up working with women and femmes. If you had asked me, and if you were like, okay, you're going to be a writer in 6 years and you're going to be working with professionals, I'd be like, oh, cool. Am I a travel writer? Like, what? I would have no idea that this is where I ended up. Um, but over the period of time, I learned that my own trauma and my own, you know, upbringing in the patriarchal society, getting married at 22 because my church dictated it, all of that, getting divorced at 29, all of that, that I learned through writing those stories for myself. I learned that I have such a huge soft spot for women who feel stuck and know that there's something else out there. And I had no idea that my career would take this turn. So it's kind of like origin. So like in some origin story would be like that moment of now what, a few baby steps that really got you to the place that you realized you had something to offer, and that you could do it. And maybe the big steps, if you have big steps, shout them out. That's impressive. If you got investors, that's impressive, and that is something that other women definitely need to hear.
Mhm.
But then also why it matters, what you learned, like what you learned about yourself, like why you see yourself like in this work, like
Yes.
what is this unique space at this table that you're now sitting at. How did you bring that chair up? That's really, really important, because I think so many women see, the tables, and they're like, oh, there's so many women that could be in this conversation, there's so many women that are in this conversation, but there's no space up there for me. Like there's no way I could pull a chair up. Yeah, there absolutely is. And every single one of us that talk about how we pulled that chair up is just giving that woman more and more, ammo and confidence and proof of concept that she can do it.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I want to rewrite my story with these things in mind. I think they're really powerful. I love it.
Yeah.
And do you want to talk a little bit about your podcast, Reclaiming?
Yeah,
What's the mission of it? What people can
absolutely.
expect for tuning in, where they can tune in?
Yeah, absolutely. So Reclaiming is a podcast and a newsletter. They're kind of complementary to each other. They come out on Mondays. The newsletter is a lot more, personal in terms of I write a little, note to my readers. Most of them overlap. The readers and the listeners overlap. Some just do the podcast, some just do the newsletter. I don't care. I'm an equal opportunity. I love everyone that wants to join our movement. And I include some, news of the day, things that people should know. Very feminist, it's very inclusionary and political, very political. There's a lot of political action that people can, advice for political action if people want to get involved in certain things. And then Reclaiming, the podcast, is kind of goes into a deep dive of some topics that, we like topics of the day. Like a couple weeks ago, I talked about Ozempic, because in Los Angeles, where I live, Ozempic is everywhere. I mean, everywhere. And I ended up talking about how, you can use Ozempic or you don't have to. You can get Botox, you don't have to. It's the choice is really yours. And but what we're not fighting that's not what we're trying to eliminate. What we're trying to eliminate is the fact that the patriarchy makes us think that we need it to succeed. And
Mhm.
it's not just the patriarchy, it's the algorithms. The algorithms only show beautiful made up faces. And it's like that's what we're fighting. We're not fighting getting Botox. We are not. You can get Botox if you want. It is up to you, boo. It is your body. You know what's best.
Yeah.
But that's what kind of Reclaiming does, is it's like we we know what's best for ourselves. We know what we need to live authentic, full lives. And we also need to reclaim those things from the patriarchy and from these systems that tell us that we need to be a certain way. Because the more power we get and the louder we get, the harder the patriarchy acts to keep us quiet. And that's really where Reclaiming is. It's just sparking that revolution from within. Little things. Ozempic, I talk about like deleting your period apps. I talk about trad wives. I talk about we talked about last week the war on drugs being a feminist issue. So we just kind of talk about all these things that women really just need to, like, we can reclaim these things one by one. And we just, change the way we look at our interactions with the world and with each other with other women, and how we can fight these systems together.
I love it. I love it. Do you want to share where they can tune in and connect with
Absolutely.
you to learn about all that you do, your business?
Yeah.
Want to speak to that?
Absolutely. So Reclaiming you can find on all of the pod streamer apps. You can sign up for the newsletter on my website, Reclaim Effing Everything. That's reclaim, EFFING everything.com. You can follow me on social media at Reclaim Effing Everything. That's just the general Reclaim project, the podcast and the newsletter for my business. My business website is sarahspurlock.com. And that's where all of my information about my services. I'm going to be offering workshops, classes, things like that in the coming months as well. So that's where I have all of that information. I'm hoping to get one started about how to tell your story so people will listen. So that's
Yeah.
coming up. That's going to be a workshop, an online workshop coming up for anyone at any stage of business. It's a one-time thing. I'm going to make it affordable for everyone. So yeah, I'll be sure to let everyone know when that comes out.
Amazing. We're going to leave all the links in the show notes or the description of this video. Any last words of
Yes.
wisdom before we wrap up?
Absolutely. So I did have 3 takeaways. I sat down and I thought about my 3 takeaways the other night, and I definitely wanted to share these with your
Okay,
listeners.
let's do it.
Your story is part of your superhero power. It took so much courage to get where you are right now. Your story right now is so critical to tell the world because it not only lends you credibility and leadership, like I said, it tells other women behind you that it's possible for them to follow their dreams too. That's so critically important. We need more people making that statement. Second, your story is perfect and worthy of being told exactly as it is. You do not need to be any certain identity or have any specific massive spectacular obstacles that you've ever overcome. Simply following your dream as a woman, as a femme identifying person, is revolutionary enough, and be proud of that. That's the second
Yes.
takeaway. And then the third is how you tell your story is just as important as what your story is. So creating a thoughtful strategy about how you're going to get it out into the world, whether it's through PR efforts or pitch decks or presentations or even just social media, or even just an email that you send out to your network or a LinkedIn strategy, whatever it is, the last thing you want is to have this amazing story, like I said, that's perfect and worthy just as it is, and not share it or not share it in the way that makes an impact. Because I think every single one of your listeners, it has a perfect worthy story that will 100% make an impact. So make sure you're telling it in a way that is true to it. Be strategic about it, and be true to it, because it deserves to be told. The world deserves to hear it, and tell it loud and tell it proud, baby.
Yes, mic drop. What a way to end. Massive chills. Thank you so much, Sarah, for being
Thank
here,
you,
for being
Cassandra.
here, for sharing your
Yeah.
brilliance and your power with the audience. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so lovely. And yeah, I am so grateful for you and your listeners. So thank you.
Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you'll be notified every time I'll upload a new video on Thursday. See you in the next one. Bye.